Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. Prime Minister and Pakatan leaders find common ground. And how do we deal with those who refuse vaccinations? That's coming up. In a rare meeting between the government and the opposition, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob and Pakatan Harapan leaders agreed today to find consensus of common issues of concern. This includes ensuring judicial independence and institutional reforms in the country's governance.
In a joint statement, Ismail, PH Chairman and PKR President Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, DAP Secretary General Lim Guan Eng and Amanah President Muhammad Sabu said the cooperation made was based on the King's decree for bipartisanship to resolve problems facing the country. The meeting focused on public interest in addressing the pandemic, protect lives and well-being, and to ease the economic crisis. Anwar said PH agreed to lower political temperature as long as the 9th Prime Minister stayed committed to pro-Malaysian policies and managed the pandemic well.
Multiple lists of cabinet posts have been circulating since Malaysia has a new Prime Minister. To date, no confirmation has been given by the Prime Minister's office on when a new cabinet will be announced. However, we want to take a look at the deliberations Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri has to make as he constructs his cabinet to bring Malaysia out of the pandemic crisis.
I think an inspired cabinet for Malaysia must consider a few primary factors. One is ethnicity and religion. Second is about spatial, meaning that inclusivity of the cabinet member from Sabah and Sarawak. The third one is the equal opportunity to political parties in the coalition. And finally, expert in the field. And I believe that the Prime Minister has to refer to these indicators to projecting a harmonious cabinet, meaning that we are seeing that Prime Minister has a lot to consider. However, a new cabinet is demanding to be relatively smaller than the previous one, with integrity become the main factors, asking or demanding the cabinet to exclude the court cluster, and looking at a more functional cabinet to lead the nation to recovery.
With that in mind, how will the Prime Minister deal with the jostling for positions, especially from other parties who have supported him as Prime Minister?
Yes, we can see that there are many jostling for cabinet position. My suggestion is the Prime Minister could review the key performance index previously gathered from each minister, derived from the 5 clusters as the evidence to determine who should stay, who should retain, and who should be replaced. And after all, they are the same pack of Perikatan Nasional members. And by looking at the evidence of key performance index, selecting the cabinet position, I believe it's more reliable and more straightforward.
Extending this conversation on Consider This Later, we ask our guests how the incoming cabinet can avoid the missteps and pitfalls of the previous administration. That's coming up right after AWANI Tonight. As the government grants more freedom to fully vaccinated individuals, there has been report that those who refuse the COVID-19 vaccines are taking advantage of the eased restrictions. We asked public health specialist Dr. Muhammad Farhan Rusli on the best measures to deal with Malaysians who are against vaccination.
All of you need to get the vaccines because we need to move on as a country. Now, if you do not want to do that, you are unable to have access to all these services. You are unable to send your kids to school. You are unable to get access to our banking services, to shopping malls, to supermarkets. So you have to do it in this way because you have to be very aggressive. If these people who refuse vaccination get sick, you have to make sure that they pay for their hospitalization. So if they stay in our ICU, if they get warded, and they stay there for the next 14, 28 days, and the bill is 240,000, bill them for it. Because you should not be able now to actually subsidize the hospitalization for something that you have given them a privilege to actually prevent. So if they stay in a quarantine center, bill them for the quarantine center. Make it $1,000 or $2,000 a day so that they pay $10,000 for being in quarantine and making us use our human resources and our infrastructure to actually treat them on something that they can actually avoid.
Dr. Farhan stressed the important role of businesses in enforcing restrictions to those who refuse vaccination, in hopes that one day this group will eventually change their minds.
I know that the economic sectors have been badly hit, but yet for us to recover from this pandemic, we need extreme help from businesses to actually make sure that they actually enforce this rule, and they have to be very vigilant in doing so. Because you cannot expect the government to be sending all the enforcement officers to every single shop, to every single stall or cafe, because that's virtually impossible. We just have too many. But if everybody did their part, and if these people who always refuse vaccination always and repeatedly get locked out, it is hopeful that one day they would actually say, you know what, my life is a mess. I can't deal and I can't do anything. My daily activities are being hindered. Perhaps it's time I actually get the vaccination and get this over with.
As for those who are fully vaccinated, Dr. Farhan says it is prudent to limit activities to outdoor environment in order to reduce the risk of contracting COVID-19.
Well, I think number one is you have to stick with your herd, which means that if you want to go out, you want to pick up your friends and you want to go somewhere, are they all fully vaccinated? Are their family members fully vaccinated? All right, then let's go. If you want to go and have a dine in, but then my take is maybe perhaps you can buy the food from a restaurant and then actually dine in your own home. You can talk to these people, you can have a chat with them. The reason why I'm not very pro to dining into the restaurants is because if there was a super spreader event happening there would be thousands of people that you would need to do contact tracing. And those people also need to have thousands others who become their close contact 1 and 2. Now, it's not that we're saying that because you've been vaccinated, you can do whatever you want. I'm saying that people are going to do it anyway. Because you're fully vaccinated, everybody else is fully vaccinated, you're not going to want to actually ride and cycle with your friends. But yet at the same time, you have to actually be sure that you take care of yourselves, which means that when it's not necessary, you don't have to actually be too relaxed, because you know that you can still have breakthrough infections even if you're fully vaccinated. So you have to be the higher person, you have to be the smarter person in all this, and actually play a big role in taking responsibility. Now, my take is, if we do go out and if we do want to participate in activities, the best thing for you is always try to move it outdoors, which means that open ventilated spaces, open air spaces, because these places are the safest places for you to do any kind of activities.
We will go for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Malaysia is ready for a sexual harassment act, and there should be no more delays in pushing through the bill in Parliament. All Women's Action Movement's Lillian Cox said it is crucial to have the legislation in place to ensure effective redressal for survivors of sexual harassment.
Currently, sexual harassment is addressable in the workplace, right, by the Employment Act, and also certain acts of sexual harassment can be redressed through the penal code. However, this itself is not enough. It's not a wide enough range students and educational institution and some other spaces out in the public do not have that kind of protection. So this is what the bill aims to cover. Right, currently. So as I've mentioned, when we are able to cover all these spaces against sexual harassment, these places are obligated to have a process and have a policy to be adapted and practiced to keep their space safe. So it will be we are encouraging, this bill will encourage safe reporting, and as well as to instill more awareness, to instill more programs that can create more awareness to overall prevent the situation from happening.
According to AWAM, 82 cases of sexual harassment were reported to the NGO between April to June 2021. 12 involved children aged 13 to 18 years old.
So in that sense, right, in schools right now, there is no mandatory policy or mandatory methods of redress for students or anyone in the educational institution who is experiencing sexual harassment. There are universities out there, public and private, in Malaysia who do have their own policies and whatnot. But this is what we want. We want everyone. We want not only universities, but we want schools as well to have this kind of policies and to practice this everywhere, of all levels of the educational institution.
Teenager Ain Husniza has sparked a nationwide conversation about sexual harassment and misogyny after criticizing her teacher for allegedly making a joke about rape. Many Malaysians inspired by Ain to speak out took to social media to share their stories of being sexually harassed. Lillian said the long-delayed sexual harassment bill in Parliament will be key to boosting protection for women. Despite the government promising to table the sexual harassment bill in 2020, debate on the bill has been delayed due to Parliament suspension.
President Joe Biden said the United States is on track to end its military involvement in Afghanistan by the end of this month. This as thousands of people are still crowding around Kabul airport in the hope of getting on an evacuation flight out of Afghanistan. Hopeful citizens were seen standing knee-deep in sewage-filled canal in an attempt to have their paperwork looked at by soldiers. Some people with the right papers for travel were pulled from the canal, but hope is dimming for many. The Taliban has allowed evacuation to continue without major interference, but said it opposed any extension of the August 31st deadline. It remains unclear whether the airlift from Kabul's airport can get out all foreigners by next Tuesday, as well as former translators and other Afghans who work for foreign forces and fear for their lives under Taliban rule. 10 million children in Afghanistan are in desperate need of humanitarian assistance since the Taliban seized power this month. UNICEF Afghanistan spokesperson Sam Mort said the humanitarian situation in the country is expected to worsen due to severe drought, the onset of winter, and the COVID-19 pandemic.
Afghanistan is a country in crisis, and those who are least responsible for it are paying the highest price. 10 million children are in desperate need of humanitarian assistance, and without immediate action, 1 million children under the age of 5 will be severely acutely malnourished by the end of the year.
She added that while UNICEF was able to provide water and other assistance to some of the international displaced population, a recent drought in the country meant food production could run out in the coming months.
Japan will place 8 more prefectures under a state of emergency as the country grapples with its largest wave of COVID-19 infections. The prefectures will come under the measure from Friday until September 12th, joining 13 other prefectures, including Tokyo and Osaka.
The government will also expand the quasi-state of emergency currently covering 16 prefectures to another 4, allowing restrictions on specific areas rather than entire prefectures. Japan's new daily cases have increased drastically over the past months to about 5,000 in Tokyo and 25,000 nationwide. Its vaccination efforts lag behind other wealthy nations, with about 40% of the population has been fully vaccinated, mainly elderly people.
That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.